Hey everyone, welcome to this podcast called Ken Reads, where I can read out your letter that you've shared with me in the hopes that I can better help you understand what the F just happened between you and the last partner you were dating, whether it was in a relationship or a situationship. I look at these experiences from the lens of attachment theory. I don't just come up with thought terminating cliches like, they're just not that into you, or if they wanted to, they would. While some of those phrases might have their benefit in other dynamics, I try and look at this from the lens of, is there perhaps an insecure attachment issue that's at play in these particular dynamics? And though I am an Australian counsellor, I am not someone who is going to be responding to these letters as if I was with a client. I'm here to provide validation, yes, but I can't provide any diagnoses on these. So even if, a lot of people might understandably hear this and be like, well, that sounds like a narcissist. At best, I'll probably say, sounds a bit narky. I probably won't go any further than that out of respect to my ethical boundaries in regards to what I can and can't do. If you find this of benefit to you, fantastic. That's what I want. And if you want to submit your letter, you're very welcome to, once there is obviously availability per month. And I'll happily read out and share my own 2 cents as to what I think has gone on in your dating experience to offer you a sense of validation for what you've been through, and also to give other people listening a chance to feel like maybe this relates to what they've also experienced as part of collective healing. So with that all out of the way, let's dive in to the latest letter. Welcome to this letter, which is a double feature. Ken Reed stars in Avoidant Discards. Whoa. At the late night, avoidant discard, Ken Reed show. All right, let's get into this. So, this letter comes from Alice. And this is a good long one. So, everybody, buckle in because we're in for a nice big roller coaster. All right. Hi, Ken. Firstly, you're an absolute superstar with the work you're doing. You're certainly one of the most informed, articulate, and nuanced professionals creating content in this space. Thank you very much. I hope you didn't mind me just randomly adding something in from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but we're all here for it. Thanks again for your time with this dumpster fire. I really appreciate your work and insights. All right, so we've already got a bit of a blurb that this is going to be a bit of a dumpster fire experience. So I'm bracing myself for it. Let's do it. Alice writes, I'm a 30-year-old woman with diagnosed ADHD. I'm medicated, which is a life changer, by the way, with CPTSD, a high ACE score or adverse childhood experience score. History of, okay, trigger warning, everyone. We're now exploring themes regarding sexual assault, sexual abuse. So just putting that out there for anyone who wants to opt out now, unless they want to continue obviously listening in. So Alice has experienced sexual abuse, assault when she was 9 years old, as well as when she was an adult at 33, and is a recovering fearful avoidant. Okay, Alice, I just want to start out with by saying thank you for sharing your history, and I am also very sorry that you've experienced such adversity growing up because that is beyond awful. You do not deserve that. So I'm really sorry that you've experienced all of that. Thank you for also sharing this because it obviously gives me some insight into who you are and also what we're about to experience as an audience listening to this. All right. I started therapy early in my 20s and identified that my inner and outer emotional world was utter chaos and destructive. I feel like between Cindy's letter just before, as well as what we're reading now with Alice, we've got the fearful avoidant we've got the fearful avoidant experience of people writing to me, which is great. To any dismissive avoidant out there, do you want to add your letter in? Anyways, let's keep going. I had done 14 plus years of work, still going, and I'm mostly secure now, still actively healing. I felt like I'd become more of a securely attached person whilst mixed in with still working through childhood trauma, but this situation has definitely set me back. I think my history of working on my avoidant attachment style and being aware that I used to shut down and withdraw when things were too much had me trying to be more present and not withdrawing. Almost like an overcorrection of my therapy work. Oh yeah, that's very much a thing. The trick then is to find the middle ground. Harder to do when you've figured the overcompensation piece. Anyways, my ex, we're going to call her Laura, is mid 40s, diagnosed with ADHD, lost her mum, who she was very close to, dad and brother over the last 15 years. Oh, wow. So she's lost pretty much significant family. She described her dad as a narcissist. Her ex-husband and his family are now her only family, which made me hesitant to push boundaries. None of them were supportive of her coming out, and there was a lot of resentment towards me as well as our relationship. Though she had dated other women prior, but I was her first serious relationship. I'm going to take a pause here to say, Alice, I worry when you share that with me because it makes me think that even though she's dated other women, if you're her first serious relationship, it makes me think that she's not been comfortable or used to being in a committed relationship with someone like you yet. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some underlying internalized homophobia that's just waiting to come out, pun intended. Our dynamic was emotionally intense quite early as we clicked in so many ways: sense of humor, values, life experiences, with some family things. But I tried to stay grounded. I showed up vulnerably and was calm during tough conversations. She regularly said the vulnerability was quote unquote addictive and would say things like, I never knew someone could love me like this or that I could love someone so deeply. At times, she was incredibly loving and caring. Acts of service were her main love language. Ah, yes, the acts of service. However, all of this was contrasted with the below shit show. She'd inherited a lot of money, she doesn't work, and was very generous in acts of service, but incredibly inconsistent emotionally. She would always say from early on that she was in awe of how I had built a business, put myself through uni twice with no help from family, and whilst I'm not financially well off, she respected how hard I work and would say things like she envied my passion and purpose as she felt like she doesn't have one. I did try to encourage her to pursue ideas she had, but I think a lack of confidence held her back. Yes, a lack of confidence. I think Laura's got a bit more than just a lack of confidence, but yes, I think you're on the money there. Another thing she loved about me was how self-aware I was and how much I embraced therapy and working on all the trauma life has handed me. I also encouraged her to start therapy during our relationship. She had never seen a therapist despite all that she'd been through. After about 8 months together, she started seeing someone who she saw 2 to 3 times in total during our 13-month relationship. Are you kidding me? I kept encouraging her to see a therapist. And, you do the work when things are good, not just in crisis. Completely agreed. P.S. If something is quoted, it's verbatim as to what she said. Well, that was what was said by either of us. Okay, that's fine. I can remember that. But let's take a pause here. So, Alice, let's talk about Laura. So, similar history-ish. Narc dad, that I don't know if you've experienced that too, Alice, but I was going to say, so she's obviously no stranger to having adverse childhood experiences too, an ADHDer. Um, she is someone who's navigating her sexuality from the sounds of it. It sounds to me like the thing I worry about is that she's actually very much experiencing a lot of arrested development in the sense that she's inherited all of this money. She's envious of you for having a life purpose, but she doesn't think she has the confidence to go out and do to do the thing, to actually find out what she wants. This could be for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to take a guess. I assume that she's holding herself back, and I think there's probably a lot of inner conflict going on inside of her, which is usually the case for a lot of these individuals. Hey, we all have a bit of inner conflict from time to time, but something tells me that she probably has a very strong part of her that doesn't feel like she's capable or competent of doing certain things. And even though part of her absolutely does want these things, university degrees, being able to have her own business, I wouldn't be surprised if she's someone who actually does want to make a bit of a life for herself. I also wouldn't be surprised if there's a large part of her that resists this because it feels too overwhelming, too scary, too much like, oh, I'd have to give up so much of my life to do this. So it's interesting how she's inherited all of this money, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if she's not particularly great with her money as well, too. You don't usually come into wealth and learn how to work through that if you, especially if you're a trauma survivor, because usually we have a great habit of spending money, like it's going out of business. So, in my experience, I would say this is sounding to me like she's probably quite a baby emotionally, even though she's in her 40s. I could be wrong, but that's my hunch. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of this stuff coming up. All right, here's the timeline and the gradual sour destruction. In August 2023, I met my ex via a dating app. She initially seemed upfront about her marriage, but it later became clear that there were admissions and lies she only admitted to because she'd either slip up or guilt got the better of her. That's a bad sign. I just want to say, if there are lies at the start of dating, A, there better be a good reason for it, but B, it's usually a very protective part of us that lies. We often lie in order to protect ourselves from judgment, shame, and abandonment. And so if that's happening, that suggests to me that she's probably not good with vulnerability at all. So, a bit of a red flag for Laura. Though she would quote unquote come clean on things later after the fact, as she said that she quote unquote knew if I knew the truth, I would leave, and she wanted her cake and eat it too. She didn't start disclosing some of the lies and omissions until November 2023. So we're talking a few months later. And by then, I was falling relatively hard. That's really not okay. It's very much survival stuff. And what I mean by that is she's obviously learned to lie to protect herself in order to establish a connection so she's not hurt. But that is not something that's conducive to healthy relationship stuff in dating. So tying back into something I completely forgot to address, which is the lack of therapy. She's not ready for a romantic relationship. You've done all this work on yourself. I mean, she can be in a romantic relationship. That's not entirely true. What I mean is, she's not at the level you're at from the sounds of it, Alice. Like, it sounds to me like Laura has got all this survival strategy stuff that's running the show. She ain't ready to be open and honest and vulnerable. Anyways, let's continue. Feelings escalated fairly quickly, but circumstances meant things moved slowly in the practice. Time together, dates, etc. Though we did sleep together on the third date and throughout the first few months, she was the one pursuing. Early on, she put me on a pedestal, saying things like, "You're out of my league," and "I can't believe you matched with me." It felt uncomfortable, but kind of flattering, but this tapered off with time and also with my reassurance of her worth. Okay, I love that you said that felt uncomfortable. I would love to know from you what was the reason that it felt uncomfortable to you because I know exactly what you mean. I think sometimes for me, it's that thing of like, this just feels like a bit too much and also feels like, why is your self-esteem so hinged on, my affection for you? It's sort of like you almost feel so put on a pedestal yourself that it's like, this feels really weird. Like, it feels like, it just feels a bit it feels uncomfortable to be told that. Also, the self-deprecation of "you're out of my league," "I can't believe you match with me." It can kind of feel like, do you just not feel like you're actually worthy? Like, I feel like you're worthy of me, but why do you not feel this? It lacks confidence. And it's not to say that we need confidence in dating as such. It's more just that it's scary because because I think for a lot of us, especially me, it makes me think, oh, you don't feel good enough for this. Like you don't feel like you can hold on to this. You could just let this go because it's too scary. Anyways, Laura told me she'd left her husband at the start of 2023 after realizing she was gay. I bet you anything that was probably not quite how it went down, that there was more to it than just being gay. I'm sure that was a part of the reason, but I bet you anything that was only a part of it. She dated a few people since, but said nothing serious and that she, quote unquote, knew from the outset nothing was going to eventuate with them. Interesting. So it seems to me like she's already got this belief system around the way things were going to work out. And I reckon she got freaked out with her husband. Yes, I understand that she's presenting as a lesbian. I get that. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's more to the story there. About 6 weeks in, she told me that a week after she came out to him, he admitted he was gay too and had known most of his life, but wanted to stay in marriage to avoid coming out. It was becoming clear there were mental health issues on his end and hers. Sounds to me like there is definitely some closeted stuff that was going on for both of them. And it does seem like I wouldn't, and see, this is why I say, yes, there's the gay component here too for both of them, respectively. But there's more to it there for both of them than that too. There's a clear fear of like being vulnerable, truly intimate. I wouldn't be surprised if he's avoidant too, actually, but also a real fear of you know, being judged and hurt as well too. So there's a lot of internalized homophobia for both of them. Uh, this added into the mix, I think, blurred my understanding of what it was at play with Laura. It wasn't my first rodeo with an avoidant, but the added complexity of her history had me assigning distance and difficulty with their dynamics and not her emotional status. Yeah, well, to be honest, I think it's very confusing because if you've gotten to know this person who's lied to you, but also you've now started to fall in love with her a few months in, you're now also hearing this history. It's probably causing a bit of cognitive dissonance where it's like, what am I to do with this information? Do I distance myself or do I stay invested? And I think a lot of people opt for the latter because it sort of feels like, well, sunk costs. Let's just see how this goes. And I don't fault people for that logic within reason. I think a lot of us often do this because we think, oh well, we've gotten in deep now, and also I want to see how this goes. This might have potential. But I often say after a while you realize that this is a story that we've been here and before we bought the shirt. We don't need to necessarily go to the same concert if we know the same tracks are going to be repeated again, and nothing's necessarily changed. Uh, in any case, let's keep moving on. In September of 2023, after a few dates of sharing a lot of life stories, she ended things via text. So, okay, we're not even at November yet, and you've already had an abrupt breakup. So she's already come at you with the too much going on, etc. Great. So that's just what you need. Is Laura giving you an abrupt breakup? And again, this is before, she reveals some of the lies to you in November. So I'm assuming there was a bit of a history of her doing this stuff. I agreed and left it at, we might connect in the future, but until you're more separated, best we call it. And I just left her alone. I was at a good point where I was at and am at a good point where I don't chase. I have to say, you've probably done a lot of work on yourself to get to a place like that. So good for you, I'd say. Fair enough. Can I just take a moment here to say, we know that obviously this is where the story picks up again because there's more to this story. Isn't it interesting how I think in those moments we can often logically look at that and go, okay, yeah, fair enough, that sounds right. And yet when temptation comes knocking and we think, oh, okay, we'll just try this again, it's like, listen, we need to stop looking at these cases purely from a rational basis of like, oh, yes, in time, maybe we'll see things differently. Not with these cases, you can't. It's if these issues are coming up this early on and there's all this other stuff that's associated with severe avoidant attachments stuff, we end it. That's it. None of like, I mean, sorry, I shouldn't say like this is the only solution because it's not. Sometimes we have to go through what presumably, Alice went through as well too. But I'm saying if you're at a point where you're a bit more of a seasoned dater and you've been through the show before, the point simply is to say, if this is your first time, I'm not here to judge you. You've got to figure out your own way out of this too, as we all do. Or with, depending on what you're doing. But I want to make it very clear that when you get to the point where you're now like you're versatile and you've also worked on your attachment stuff and you're going out to dating again, we really need to connect with what's going on internally for us and how we're feeling about the connection. Because if there's all this inner conflict from the person and they're saying stuff like, oh, I just don't know, like I feel as though, what was being said again? Sorry, it was too much going on. That's not the excuse. Like it's an excuse, but it's not what's really going on. It's hiding a lot of inner conflict, and someone's not able to get on top of their inner conflict and see a therapist, doomed. Anyways, let's continue. So in October, she circled back after I left her alone. Laura had made separation progress with her previous ex, and yes, my psychologist at the time was telling me this was red flag city, but oxytocin and dopamine, yeah. And look, this is why I wasn't going to judge you because, I totally get it. And often I think it's not just the oxytocin and dopamine. I think also it's the unfinished business piece of it as well too. The potential, the stuff there about being chosen, whatever's relevant that's coming up in the moment. And I think also if you're bored and lonely and you're missing a person, this can be just like the perfect thing to get. Oh, this person wants to try again. Oh my God, it feels great. So, yeah, I think your psychologist was on the money for saying this is absolute red flag city sort of stuff. But I got to give you credit where it's due, Alice. Sometimes we need to go back for another round to figure this stuff out. So, anyways, I get it. Anyways, Her ex-husband became increasingly controlling and jealous. So this is the ex-husband who's come out as gay. I don't see any reason as to why he needs to be controlling and jealous at this stage. Suggests to me that he has big issues. But her and I were kind of in this loved up us versus them bubble. Oh dear. They were still cohabitating, and he would bounce between wanting her to be happy to resenting her for quote unquote forcing him to come out. Never the case with pressure from her. She was out to her close circle and put no pressure on him. But okay, mate. He has a lot of internalized homophobia, and yeah, no shit. I mean, I totally I heard that from like the previous paragraphs. But I also think too he's probably very avoidant, and I also wouldn't be surprised as well if when things aren't going well with that relationship, she turns to you as a source of comfort. And I wouldn't be surprised if he stays in the picture throughout a lot of this. Um, I suspect that she probably oscillates between wanting to see him out of comfort and then seeing you and then freaking out and sort of going back and forth. That's my prediction. Because I suspect she probably feels bad about herself when she's not with him and making it work out. And then when she's with you, she freaks out because it's too close, it's too much, it's too good to be true, it's too scary. And she goes back to him. But then when it becomes too uncomfortable and unbearable, she comes back to you. The classic conflict of freedom and control that a lot of us fall into from time to time. So let's get going. Uh, In November 2023, during a week away, she was intermittently present. Her ex was harassing her constantly about being there with me, even though before we left, he said he wanted her to have a good time and was happy she was getting away with me. During the trip, she was drunk, letting slip that they'd still been sharing a bed because he wasn't ready to tell the kids they were separating or that either of them are gay. She admitted she'd been lying to keep me around, which is enter the first stage of the I knew if I told you the truth, you'd leave. I wanted to have my cake and eat it too. After the trip, I semi-ended things, saying I can't be with someone who is still essentially married, etc. Good on you for semi-ending it. I will give you that. But something tells me that there was a part of you that was also having a little bit of internal conflict as well, where you wanted it. So it seems like there was a part of you that was like, this is just not a good situation to be in. However, another part of you was like, oh, I don't know if I feel good about that. So, hey, I relate. I know what that's like. Skip to December of 2023 and January of 2024. Laura circled back around in late November after big progress in the separation had been made. Isn't this interesting that the theme seems to be that when there's a major separation, she comes to you? I wouldn't be surprised if she goes back to him after each of these breaks. The kids knew he moved into one of their units, etc. And I took this progress as her being congruent with words and actions. And in hindsight, it seems it was her fear of abandonment driving her progress and coming back. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I feel like she's using you for a bit of a, as a way of calming her fear of abandonment. But then anytime that she feels like her freedom's then going to be, taken away, she then probably bounces back to him for comfort. Anyways, the kids, sorry, I read that bit. We became more serious and headed into relationship territory. I also started staying at hers where the kids weren't around, and over the next few months, at her request, moved a few of my things into her place. Clothes, bathroom items, a few things in the bedside drawer. He had moved out, met someone soon after, and was in a relationship with a guy. I hadn't met kids yet. Well, I was going to say he's probably not ready to be in a romantic relationship either, so I worry for his situation as well. I hadn't met the kids yet because her ex, quote unquote, wasn't ready. He controlled many of the milestones, including when I was allowed to meet the kids, despite him deciding off of his own bat very soon after allowing me to that his partner was fine to meet the kids. Oh, great. So he's allowed to introduce his own partner to the kids, but you're not allowed, even though you're his ex's partner. Weird. Very controlling. Throughout the relationship, she kept tolerating these double standards and prioritizing him over us to quote unquote keep the peace. That's her childhood trauma coming out. So what I think is happening is she's still in a way married to this guy, even though she's separated, and she's using you as sort of like the third party to get her needs met emotionally. So it seems like whenever, she gets too close to you, she'll go back to him. But when she's finds him insufferable, she'll go to you. So yeah, I feel like, and it'll be out of fear of abandonment too. So yeah, this is classic affair sort of stuff, even though this isn't an affair because they've separated, but she hasn't emotionally separated from this guy. This behavior wore me down so much over time. I didn't feel seen, heard, or valued. I bet it wore you down. This shit's exhausting. It's horrible. I'm sorry you've gone through this, Laura. Sorry, Laura. Laura. No, sorry, Alice. I'm sorry, Alice, that you've gone through this because of Laura's behavior. Terrible stuff. In April to May of 2024, we had a holiday away that despite me being super sick, it was a really good time and we seemed a lot closer after this. No withdrawal from her and breakup boomerang. Life pressures started from about July to August. I had some underlying health issues, found a heart condition, Jesus, that'll require surgery, and another issue that also required surgery too. All of which was a huge stress to me and a big money pit. Yeah. I know. All I can say is I feel you there, and again, I'm sorry you've gone through the health shit show too, because I know what that's like. Uh, so I was moving from across the city. Oh, wait, sorry. I'd also had to move out of my previous rental, and we didn't want to move in together, but I wanted to be closer. So I was moving from across the city to 5 minutes away from her. The share house was small, so much of my stuff ended up being stored at her place. In July of 2024, after a few good months where it seemed like we were getting closer and things were getting into a sort of rhythm, we had a nice few days and then she rapidly withdrew for a day, texted me, and quote unquote ended things again, for fuck's sake. Yeah, this seems to be her pattern, and I wouldn't be surprised if she goes back to him or finds someone new. I called her and I asked if this was her actually ending or it was just her panicking. She admitted it was panic, so we talked and stayed together. Oh, great. So you had to talk her off a cliff. After this last bout, it got to a point that I'd sent her a text saying, "I don't feel valued. I don't feel like you have my back. It feels like my needs only matter when I don't rock the boat. I don't feel like I matter." So good you said that. Well done. That is really, really good of you to say. We then had a sit down, talk, and in amongst the tears, I said to her, "It feels like I'm the only one investing in this. I'm pouring into trying to build a foundation for us, and every bit of energy I put in, you're taking and putting into pandering to your ex." Oh my word, Alice. I feel you with every syllable of that sentence. I'm sure many people who are listening would feel the same way. I'm going to read that out again. It feels like I'm the only one investing in this. I'm pouring into trying to build a foundation for us, and every bit of energy I put in, you're taking and putting into pandering to your ex. My word. Ugh, my heart. But it's so true, isn't it? Isn't that the truth? Just, oh, I'm so sorry that you've gone through this. That's so terrible. Like, just yuck, 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 yuck. It's that real horrible feeling of knowing that this person is there, but simultaneously feeling unloved and just feeling so used and not like a priority at all. It's terrible. It can make you feel completely erased. I also said to Laura after saying the above, you can choose to have a partner who fully supports you and supports you having a healthy co-parenting relationship with your ex-husband, or you can choose to third wheel a relationship with your gay husband who lets you have a side piece. Well fucking said. Well said. But I bet this probably didn't land well for her. She apologized but didn't acknowledge any actions on her behalf. She wouldn't say too much, just that she, quote unquote, wanted this, as in us. So part of her does want this, but there's huge resistance to wanting you because it comes with a lot of risk to her sense of survival and safety, obviously. Now, in August 2024, we went away for a week. The ex did his usual shit, calling and just sabotaging the holiday. Go figure. The usual pattern. Closeness, then get home and she wants to end things again. I asked for space and intentionally ended things. Was on the tip, and I intention and I int let me start that sentence again. The usual pattern occurred. Laura ended things just as we were getting closer. I asked for space and internally was ending things, and it was also on the tip of my tongue. But I still had hope for fuck's sake. And when we reconnected, she said, "You knew I wanted to leave and you still stayed. That's why I love you." How fucking confusing is that shit? But again, it really speaks to her, because this is part of her fearful avoidant belief of like, oh, everybody leaves me, nobody stays, I'm just going to be a bother to people, etc. But oh man, the self-sabotage with her is on crack. I was running on empty. I bet you were. This is terrible, by the way, what you're experiencing. You're also experiencing your own internal conflict, I can tell. But like, it's one of those wild things that another person's inner conflict can also generate inner conflict inside of us as well too. So yeah, it's rough, isn't it? From April, my old issues with sleep, self-worth, body image were gradually rising again, and they had been fine for years. And she offered very little support during my worsening health issues, but I was still there for all of her issues. She also had surgery coming up in November, and I took her to the gym 2 to 3 times per week for S&C prehab, which went, and I also went to all of her special appointments, etc. So going back to the Arrested Development piece that I said way at the beginning, where she's inherited all of this money and she's obviously, you know, resting on her laurels a little bit by not wanting to actively pursue work or a purpose. You are a mum to her. She is such a baby in this relationship. She is so childlike. You know, again, similar to what I was saying in Cindy's letter beforehand, you can be a fearful, avoidant, attached. Sorry, not you specifically. Let me change the language around that. I use you can be an avoidant, anxious, fearful, avoidant for shorthand because it's a little easier at times off the tip of my tongue. Let me delineate for the sake of making this a bit more sensical. You can have an attachment style that is avoidant, dismissive, or fearful. But just because you have that attachment style does not mean you cannot change. But in saying that, I think what it goes to show is that even between two people who have avoidant attachment, in this context, Alice is obviously navigating this in a much more mature way, even though she has the same impulses as Laura, but is handling and navigating this very differently. And it just goes to show that we've got to be careful about looking at this group of people not as a monolith, not as if to say like they're all like this because they're not. It's to show that, these struggles that we go through with people, the severe end are a bit more monolithic, I've got to be honest, and that's why the podcast has been helpful. But I think it really speaks to more than just attachment issues. It goes into character. I'll quote Amy till the day that, I die, as in Amy, my teammate. She really does a great job whenever she's co-hosting to actually go, we're dealing with a character issue now. We're not dealing with someone who's just got attachment issues. Yes, the attachment issues are there, but we're dealing with someone who's got really arrested development and someone who's not willing to take accountability. And in this case, is playing out their childhood trauma in big ways. So yeah, it's big stuff here. Anyways, let's continue. In September 2024, I moved to a share house around the corner and we'd go away for a weekend. It seemed like a great weekend. Lots of physical intimacy, lots of talking and connecting, talking about our Christmas plans, a trip overseas next year in about 2025. Over the weekend, she was warm, affectionate, seemed very relaxed, and was very much loved up, or so I thought. She also mentioned that me being down lately is hard for her and that she quote unquote can't fix me. And she shit self-image and sorry, and my oh sorry. She also mentioned that me being down lately is hard for her and that she quote unquote can't fix me and my shit self-image, which was good until probably about April 2024. But you're not asking her to fix your self-image. It sounds to me like she's coming in it from that fixer mentality, that savior mentality of like, oh, I feel like I can't fix you. Probably she does want to try and fix you, but she feels powerless. Something tells me that was not a boundary, but more of a point of frustration for her. Probably a bit of projection too, I would say. We get home after 30 minutes at home, and she just drops all the avoidant bullshit. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. There's so many great things about being with you, but the feeling is just gone. I hoped it would last, but it's gone. Our values don't align. I don't see a future with you, etc. The avoidant excuses. So it sounds like to me she's entered the freeze. Okay, so I want to take a little moment here to say that when avoidant attachers go into the freeze, that's usually because a part of us takes us there, right? We can work to recover and not have that part go into that space if we work on it and also become aware of it when it's starting to be activated, and we can have some premeditation around it. You know, so many avoidant attachers, and this I'm gonna relate a little bit of this to binge eating, is a lot of avoidant attachers approach this with such degrees of perfectionism. They're like, I have to show up, I have to do this, I have to that. It's like, stop. Stop beating yourself up and stop trying to force yourself to be perfect in this relationship. That perfectionism is part of the problem. They push themselves so hard to be the perfect partner that they can't sustain it. And then this other side of them comes out, which is like, fuck it, I can't do it, amongst a bunch of other things. And then they dissociate, they stress themselves out, they lose their enthusiasm, they lose their motivation, and this happens. And then they're like, oh, I just don't feel this anymore, I've got to leave. It's like, no, 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 no. What you're experiencing is a lack, is just like, your body's response to so much stress you're putting on yourself, amongst other things, and a lot of unconscious things that are happening as well too. They really need therapy to work through this, otherwise this happens. And unlike food, you can abuse food, but if you abuse a human being, that has serious implications and impacts on the person. So yeah, there is that aspect. Binge eating is not the perfect analogy for this, but there are many comparisons that I want to draw out in later content. Anyways, let's keep moving. I asked how long she'd been thinking about ending things, and she said that day. I asked if she had spoken to her therapist or friends about this at all, and she said no. She asked to stay friends. I said no way. I threw some anger her way. I told her, Laura, you just used me to be your fucking physical therapist, your psychologist, and walk you through your breakup with your fucking husband. Stop being a fuck and actually start seeing your therapist. No one deserves to be collateral damage because you're too chicken shit to work on yourself. I have nothing to say other than well done. That anger is so valid. I only asked why she ended things the day after we broke up and got the same avoidant bullshit. So I've never pursued more of an answer because I know that she either can't or won't give an answer. One interesting thing she did say in this chat was when we were in blank and you were upset, even though you told me why and apologized for snapping at me, although I said it was fine, I just felt like a smacked child and couldn't get past that. I need to work on that. Okay, so I'm assuming from what I'm reading here, Laura is saying that when we were together and you were upset, even though you told me why and apologized for snapping at me, although I said it was fine, I felt like a smacked child and couldn't get past that. Okay, clearly to me, what's it's striking to me about what she just said here is there is a part of her that regressed to a child and felt so bad about herself. She probably felt a lot of shame, probably felt so bad, so unworthy. And as a consequence, she felt like she couldn't get past it, even though she said it was okay. So clearly, once again, she's not being completely honest with you. That night, I delete her and her friends from my socials. I was gutted that I'd been booted from her life with no rhyme, reason, or logical explanation, and no chance at all to see or say goodbye to her kids. I have a funny feeling that we're still due in for at least another few rounds because even though we've still got at least another 3 pages to go. So what's really interesting to me is it sounds like the story of Alice and Laura is not quite at its official full stop just yet. In November 2024, we connected in person once before her surgery, made out, had a talk, still got zero input as to what the fuck happened. Just she said, I don't regret breaking up, but also layered it with she'd grown so much since being with me. I made her a better person. I changed her life. So basically, Laura is on one hand saying, I don't regret breaking up, but you were the best thing for me. What? It's like, honey, can you not see that? just I wanted to say two things can be true at once, but at the same time, I feel like I don't think she knows how to see that you could still be with Alice and not need to do this to her. Anyways, it is what it is. Let's continue. Uh, oh, uh, she asked how I felt about the relationship, and I told her that whilst I think there were some good parts, I didn't grow and it left me drained, and I don't feel like I was any better for the relationship. She did say when we were a few months into dating that before meeting me, quote, she felt so numb and like she'd ticked all the boxes in life, had no money issues, had kids, had a nice house. So if she died, she kind of feels like she had done what she needed to do. But since meeting me, she was excited for life again and things felt amazing and she was looking forward to life with me. Oh, great. So basically, she's telling you that life was brilliant with you. And then all of a sudden, it's not. I know what self-sabotage feels like. When you find something that you love, whether it be a job, a friend, a workplace, it can bring up a lot of difficult things for us. For those of us that are CPTSD survivors, we often struggle with a lot of perfectionism, and as a consequence, we often feel that we need to show up perfect. That thinking doesn't just lie up here, it's an ingrained form of conditioning. And we can stress ourselves to the bone, thinking we need to show up in very particular ways to make something work. And when we put all of our effort into something and ultimately burn out, we lose our enthusiasm and interest in something and ultimately back away because we feel like it's just not what we need and we need to find something new. We need to learn as trauma survivors to become much more compassionate and loving towards ourselves and to work through our perfectionism, amongst many other things, so this doesn't happen. Because I can assure you, as someone who has nearly self-sabotaged their own business, which they love, I can promise a lot of people that a lot of this comes down to our own internal conflict and needing to work through it. It is so easy to self-sabotage, especially when you love something. I'm just putting it out there. It can happen to anyone, and they don't just have to have an avoidant attachment style. Anyways, let's keep going. Um, let's see. So she's mentioned obviously how amazing she felt with you. Uh, During this November chat, oh, sorry, no, no, no. She did say when we were a few months into dating that before meeting me, she felt so numb. Mentioned that. She's excited for life again. Now, during this November chat, she'd said the exact same, only it had switched to where she was saying she was feeling the numbness in the relationship with me. But now she was out of it. She was feeling excited about life again. Yeah, I think this makes sense to me, but it also, I think what was probably happening, my interpretation was she was probably overcommitting herself in some ways to you and also not allowing us. And I think she was probably also resisting some of her own fears and uncertainties and anxieties and not allowing herself to probably slow down and feel things through. So, yeah, I think that a lot of this is on her for not having some restraint and also working through some of her own stuff. So, I think that there probably was a bit of numbness she felt in the relationship as she was entering the freeze, but I don't think she's giving you a comprehensive view of what was going on. I think she was both excited to be with you, but then as time went on and she probably was starting to like, you know, burn out, I think that's when things started to feel numb to her. So I don't think that her narrative is quite accurate in the way she's telling it to you. Aside from seeing how her surgery went, I haven't reached out at all, aside from 4 to 5 times from the breakup to collect things. Now, in early December, she begins to reappear at the gym, and we go to sorry, she goes to the gym that we used to go to at my usual times. How interesting. So she's clearly not quite setting up boundaries with you. Every time I see her, I get told, I look really good. She would mention the kids are asking about me. Laura would always ask for a hug and would always ask about my health. No, this is so not okay. This is so emotionally manipulative. I call out all of the above and say, why are you flirting? Why do you want a hug? Why are you telling me about the kids? Alice, I love that you are calling her out on this stuff. Now, her response regarding the kids was, I want you to know that you did matter. Me internally, I was thinking, fuck you, Laura. I'm going to echo that and say, yeah, fuck you, Laura. The gym appearances stopped from Christmas. There was silence. Let's skip to March 2025. I'd given myself a sort of an internal, sorry, I'd given myself a sort of internal time frame. If I hadn't received any acknowledgement, apology from her by now, that I'm done and will start to move my stuff out and call it a day. I was kind of hoping that she started seeing her therapist and would have a bit of realization about what was going on in September, but it hadn't happened, so time was up. I head over there mid-March to start the purge. She's unaware of my internal deadline, but it didn't matter. That's a great internal boundary, by the way. I've exercised things like that myself, and it's really good to have. When there, I see new quote unquote couple photos of her and a random on the fridge. I won't regurgitate the whole conversation. Nothing got heated, but I did throw some challenge statements out in a calm way. The key things that were said were Laura literally says this new person was a rebound who she met in another city on her way to work and was needing to fill a void in November. I was booked to go on that trip in November 24th. Okay, so what I'm hearing here is that Laura was saying that the new person is apparently just a rebound, it was filling a void, and she took this person on a trip that was supposed to be with Alice. So that's a bit rough. Laura also writes, it's good. It's like being single but having relationship perks. We've only met in person twice since the original meeting, as she lives interstate. Alice says, you say that she's a rebound, but not even 5 months since we broke up, she's plastered all over your fridge. That's weird for the kids. I agree. All of this communicates to me that you either never gave a fuck about our relationship or you haven't processed any of it. 1 billion% yes. She says to Alice, are you dating? Alice responds, do you really want to know? Laura replies, yes, I don't get jealous. I know I'm not normal. And this is, and what's really funny here is Alice writes about Laura. She's wearing her dysfunction like a medal. But she also said that when we were together, it was the first time she'd experienced jealousy. To me, it sounds like Laura doesn't really know herself very well, and she thinks that she doesn't experience jealousy when she absolutely can experience jealousy. I didn't say yes or no to dating. I said, I'm going to go take it slow. I want to have my shit together before jumping in with someone. I'm guarded and have boundaries up because my tolerance for fuckery doesn't exist anymore. Laura also adds, Alice says to Laura, I'll organize getting the rest of my stuff as soon as possible. She says, there's no rush. Alice says, there is. If you're dating someone and I'm starting to date, it's messed up if you have your ex's stuff still stored there. Completely agree. She did initiate a very warm hug at the end of all of this. I find it really funny because Alice has written this with a question mark at the end. So it's like, why did she give me a hug? I've had that happen to me too. It's really fucking annoying because it's just so confusing because it's like, why are you like, you say one thing, but you act another? It's so confusing. But again, inner conflict, right? Part of her wants you, part of her wants to push you away. After I get home, I send a text saying that when she says things like, I don't want to upset you, etc., when I'm not upset, is what actually makes me upset and get annoyed. And it comes off condescending and is just her projecting. It's almost like every time there was something that was uncomfortable for her, she just project and shut down the topic with that statement. It made me question if I was being confrontational, but aside from the interaction that day, I knew I hadn't been. In response to my text from going, no rush to I'm dating someone, so are you, I'd appreciate you getting the rest of your things before the end of the month. I just wanted to move on, and I'm sure you do too. I can't do that with your stuff still here. I go silent because I'm so fucking done with Laura's shit. As I realize that if there is ever any change, which is unlikely, that it will be years away. Yep. She messages me on the weekend saying she's heading out, and if I want, I can get a carload of things. And I ignore the message. But go with my housemate and clear out everything. I leave a drawing for her kids with a note because we used to spend hours each week drawing together. And again, I never got to see them again. I want to take a moment here to say I'm so sorry about that because this is the other thing too, that when we're with partners who are avoidantly attached, it's so painful to not only lose the partner, but also to lose the other people that we connected with at the same time as well, particularly the children. And they're the ones who also suffer as well too, because they need stability. Otherwise, welcome to generational trauma 101. This stuff really hurts so many people that there's such secondhand trauma that goes on for the people who are also impacted by this as well. And I think it really does go to show that for someone like Alice, you've now got to grieve not only the loss of Laura, but also the kids as well too, which is just awful. And that whole like, I'll never see them again. Like we often feel like we're ripped from these people before we even have a proper chance for closure. Laura messaged me that night saying, "Thank you for the drawing. The kids loved it. It was really thoughtful." And I chose to ignore this. She appears at the gym a few days later. I act like she doesn't exist. She has avoided gym at my time since just before Christmas. She appears a few days later. We make eye contact. She looks sad and sheepish as all hell. I just raise my eyebrows and keep walking. Each April, she has had an annual work trip. She doesn't, English. Early April, she has had an annual work trip she does that takes her near home. God, late night reading. I'm just turning into a non-native speaker. I'm fluent in gibberish. Early April, Laura has had an annual work trip she does that takes her near her hometown. We spoke last year about me going and doing a trip either side of the work days. I'm a little bit sus on this trip given what had happened and 2 to 3 weeks prior, and I have a look at her socials during this week. I know I shouldn't be looking and hate that I did. One day, every one of my friends that she was friends with on Facebook, she has unfriended, and that grabbed my attention. A few hours later, her and her quote unquote rebound are plastered all over social media doing the holiday touristy things we literally spoke about doing not long before the breakup. Within hours, they're friending each other's friends on socials. She's refriended her ex-husband. Of course she did. The rebound is Facebook friends with her ex-husband and the ex-husband's boyfriend. I don't know why, but 6 months later, it threw me back to the week of the breakup. Seeing this unfold just made me feel like she was literally erasing me from existence. What is with that? I'll take a moment here to answer that. Firstly, that feeling of erasure is the worst feeling in the world. Loneliness is a close second, but this, oh. And I think also, it really is her way of avoiding difficult feelings associated with you. Going back to my binge eating analogy, which I really want to use in content, it'd be like if you're a chocolate cake and she's decided to ban you from her food because it's trigger food, right? And she's like, never again, no more chocolate cake. It's like, but you like chocolate cake. What are you doing? And she's trying to act like you don't even exist and you can't be eaten. And it's just like, no, 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 honey. That's not how this works. You like chocolate cake. So I know this isn't always a straightforward analogy because binge eating is not the same as avoidant attachment. I get it. But just forgive me for using this as a bit of an analogy here, which is to say, if you're a binge eating survivor, of which I am no stranger of being, in my experience, when it comes to recovery, it's very dangerous to swear off certain food groups. In some cases, you have to, but it's very dangerous to do that because the mind does not like restriction at all. And so, as a consequence, that which you restrict, you often may binge on down the line. That applies to a lot of things. So, the thing that you have to be very mindful of is that when we look at this in the context of what she's doing, she's trying to essentially pretend like you never even existed to like get away from you because feelings associated with you bring up a lot of uncomfortable feelings inside of her, probably shame and guilt and embarrassment. So in that context, she's going back to her old ways because that's what's comfortable. The ex-husband, so having the rebound there, as she said herself, it's like having a relationship in terms of the perks without it being a real relationship. So yeah, there is that aspect of it too. Let's round out. In hindsight, I realized that the only time there was actionable change from her was when I was about to walk. When I held space and a softer boundary, it literally just enabled her to get more comfortable in being selfish and controlling the whole dynamic. So I'm stuck at the following. I can't reconcile who she was versus who she is at the beginning. I don't need closure. Her actions are the closure. I feel so incredibly gaslit and invalidated by literally everything she's said and done. I recognize that she did care, but the recent behavior has me questioning everything. B, the hot cold gym appearance around picking up my stuff and the Facebook friend purge and rebound launch is wild, as in launching the new relationship on Facebook with the rebound. I'm head spinning about this behavior. I have never experienced this all before, not even from dating shit shows in my early 20s. God, you're funny. I'm struggling with having an idea, but no confirmation that she's created a totally different narrative about me, what happened to her friends, as I've seen one of two of them in public, and their behaviors towards me is like I've done something wrong, which makes me feel like utter shit. Because aside from raising my voice at the breakup, I literally can't think of a thing that I did that was worthy of that behavior towards me, which it was literally just a slight raise in voice, not even a yell. Importantly, I'm not even sure how to rebuild trust in myself that I won't fall into a dumpster fire like this again. I felt like I was showing up as a good partner and quote unquote holding space, but it just opened up an avenue for self-abandonment and immense pain. So I know there's more work to do. I'm in pause mode with the psychologist at the moment as I literally feel therapied out. Oh my God, Alice, thank you so much for sharing all of that with me. That was great to read because it was entertaining, but I am also aware of the pain that this has caused you because this is so fucking painful. No wonder you feel therapied out. You've literally gone through probably enough therapy to be an expert by now. You should join the field. But just to sort of give you my own hot takes on A, B, C, and D, some of which I've already answered. Um, I think with regards to what you've said here is yes, she did care. But this is the thing, it's all about internal conflict. I am being reductive in the sense that she wants the freedom, but she also wants to, be in a relate. She wants the connection and the closeness around it, and she tries too hard with that, and then she burns out and backs away. B, why would she still hang out with you at the gym, but then simultaneously do the whole like remove you from everything thing? This is a great example of where part of her still wants you, and then she's trying to disavow that part of her that wants you and is then trying to erase you from existence to make her feel more at peace so she's not triggered. C, I'm struggling with the idea that she has created a different narrative about what happened to her friends, as I've seen one or two of them in public, but the behaviors towards me act like I've done something wrong, even though you haven't. Yeah, because this is her way. She probably has created a new narrative around this. It's about psychological safety, right? It's about her creating a narrative that allows her to feel safe with the events of what's happened, so she doesn't feel bad, triggered, guilty, embarrassed about this. Act of denial. And then finally, I'm not sure how to rebuild trust in myself that I won't fall into this dumpster fire like this again. Okay, there's a lot of things here. And the big thing I would say is learning to also work through your own inner conflict of stuff that was playing out with this. Learning to also validate the times when you knew you were like, oh, yeah, that was a red flag. It's also about going through this in your own time when you're ready and really just piecing apart a lot of this, trying to construct a narrative where you're able to see that two things can be true at once. She has strong feelings for you, but she also needs to back away to protect herself because of her own fears of intimacy. That she also wanted this, but was freaking out because of her own, stuff that was going on. And that a lot of this speaks to her fears of abandonment, intimacy, her own disordered relational style. A lot of this stuff does come down to narrative work and to piecing it together and understanding it. But that can be a difficult journey to go through and is a bit of an existential crisis in and of itself. I'm going to round out here. Thank you for what was a very compelling, tragic, unfortunate, sad, and stimulating read all at once. See, many things can be true. And I'm sorry that you went through that, Alice, because it does sound like this has broken your mind. And you mentioned you're an ADHD, so with all due respect, it's probably going to, be even more difficult to wrap your head around it because I think people who are neurodivergent do struggle with these relationship breakups even more than people who are autistic. So I think it's just part and parcel of what you're going through right now. So yeah, I am sorry that you went through this. And I just thought this was very, this was such a powerful, practical, insightful, and relatable read. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you sharing this.